yes, got to do that. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara live now on my personal profile on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, as we've been doing for months now on YouTube. Okay, so welcome everybody, and well, how's things going, Dave?
Not bad, not bad. Went to Toastmasters last night. I'm finding more and more of us are going online. I did last week because I wasn't feeling too well, but I complained. I was the GE last night, the general evaluator, and in the end, I said we had 4 new faces and only 3 veteran Toastmasters there, and we had a bunch on the screen. And I just said, you can't help people become Toastmasters if you interact with them just on the TV screen. I said, we have to have more people in person. So that was my big beef last night.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing because I think we are relying too much upon the Zoom and the internet stuff. It's nice. It should be nice as an add-on when you can't do it.
That's right, and I've done it myself, but like I said, last week I didn't because I had quite a headache and I didn't feel very well. So
yeah,
I didn't go, but I still could attend through Zoom, and that was that was a good thing. However, when we start to get complacent and start going, when we are paying for a room and like we're only getting 7 people in there,
and it's like, for example, a council meeting, and if a councillor happens to be on holiday, let's say in Australia or something, or happens to be at a conference in British Columbia or something, I think it's appreciated when they can dial in and give their input on that meeting, even when they're not local, but there has to be limits.
Yeah. So we're getting quite comfortable with our electronics, but remember just a couple of days ago, I talked about the most common types of mental health problems we're having. And I think a lot of that has to do because of our isolation that that a lot of us do. And the isolation, like Zoom, is kind of a way of keeping in touch, but not really keeping in touch with another person and persons. So I believe that it's just not. I think we have to put some sort of effort into becoming people again and interacting with one another a little bit more. Jules Verne, I guess he had a book that was never published, and they only discovered it a few decades ago. It was a lost manuscript, I guess, or one that had not been completed. And Jules Verne, of course, is the one that did Around the World in 80 Days, and he was very futuristic. And
80 Leagues Under the Sea, or George, 80 Leagues Under the Sea, and Journey to the Center of the Earth were all him, weren't they?
Yeah, he had quite a bit of insight into what was going to happen into the future. But one of the book that wasn't published is he predicted people would become very, very isolated from one another, and they would move around singly in transportation systems that you drive by yourself, so you're not with other people. It's kind of like cars and isolation in your homes, and so he kind of predicted something like that. I think we're kind of there. I think we just got to hit the reset button and just remember that we're human beings, and interaction human to human is better for us. I think that a
Well,
lot of the mental health issues we have are because of things like TV and well, social media adds on to that. But I think it began way back when we started watching a whole lot of TV. I think we need to be influenced by people interacting more than we do from a tube. Now I gotta be the worst offender of that because I scan YouTube all the time for relevant political history or geography stuff. So if I happen to hit a documentary about ancient Sumeria, I won't leave the house. I'll watch that documentary.
yeah, okay. All right. Here's another add-on to that one though, is smug made Canadian superiority means that immigrant talent is very often underused in this country. And this is according to a survey by Deloitte Canada for the Institution of Canadian Citizenship. And they're basically saying that employers are quick to dismiss immigrants as not as their experience and ideas, etc., as not the way we do things here in Canada. And it's among the contributors for underutilizing immigrant talent. And there's a mindset stemming from Canadian compliancy that prevents employers from hiring and integrating newcomers and hinders promotion and retention of immigrant talent.
Yes, I would say I'm not so sure that the word smug is the right word to use. Because everywhere I go, there's new Canadians working everywhere. At the staple store that I was at, it was mostly manned by new Canadians. Every one of them had an accent almost. There was the odd native-born Canadian, but most of them were from offshore new Canadians. So they were all working in just about every one of them were new Canadians. That's at that level, at the staple store level. I'm not so sure what they say. Are they thinking along the lines of engineering or other things? And remember, for employers to be able to take on somebody new who may not have the fullest command of the English language. That's one thing, and may have other ways of. And of course, we're going to be smug because we think we're one of the most advanced countries in the world. But is it smugness? We do things better here. That's not how we do it. I really haven't come across that too much.
I have. I'm sorry to say that I have.
Okay.
Right? I come across it insofar as I know it to be the case in terms of the medical profession. I have got a pharmacist friend who came from the UK and had to completely retrain here in Canada. I mean, not an element of the UK pharmacy rules were accepted in the College of Pharmacists. Had to completely retrain to continue a profession she already knew. Right. Same with myself. I should be recognized by the Law Society of Ontario as a lawyer here. Right. I should not have had to requalify.
Why?
Why should I? I've got 100%. The only thing, it would be the same for me if I were to be an expert in one area of law and I moved to another area of law. Let's say you were a family lawyer and you moved to criminal law, you'd have to go back to the books and study them again. No different for a person moving, with having qualified in Britain and coming here to Canada. I know the law. I know the common law. I've got most of the qualifications. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have had to have gone and done, let's say, an articling with the law firm, but something could have been arranged, and that's part of the smugness that exists here.
Well, what about the smugness back in the UK? You said you couldn't get a job as a lawyer in the UK. Weren't you faced with smugness there?
Yeah, there's an element of smugness there. I won't deny, but again, anything to do with any, anything to do with finding, there is
Well,
certainly issues.
basically, I put it this way: you never were a working lawyer. You had
I
the
was not.
education.
That's true. It's true. I
Yeah.
wasn't working as a lawyer.
So in your case, I don't think you can bring up that case in your case, except that you should have had the opportunity maybe to write.
All I need to do is pay.
bar.
Well, I'll put it this way: all I need is the study material and to do the licensing exam. That is all. Full stop. End of story.
But they won't let you do that.
I should not be facing $60,000 worth of retraining.
Okay, but in your case, you faced the smugness first of all in your own country, even being.
No, I wouldn't say I faced the smugness in my own country. It's not a case of that. I just didn't manage to get through that as I hoped would happen. But anyway, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about other people here. I'm talking about the whole system here that's at play.
Well, there is certainly, if you take the let's say if you were a doctor and you don't know the English language that well, and or the French language that well, and you can't take the test, you can't pass the test. I think that's part of the problem. Like if a person was a doctor, like because I remember meeting a doctor he was a surgeon, but he could only assist. He was from Iran and he was assisting Dr. Huck actually, and he can't. The language barrier was his big thing. He couldn't get over that language barrier. That was the problem he had. So I imagine a bunch of medical professionals come in, and some people just do not have the ability to learn a language that easily. And so, yeah, you would say that he would be underutilized. But he did get a job in the medical field, but that was because Dr. Huck had him in as an assistant and was helping him out. I think although I remember a surgeon that did an operation on my wrist was a fellow by the name of Dr. Abu Kur. He did also a scope on my knee and my shoulder. Now, he was from Egypt. So he walked in there and his English was good, and he was from Egypt, and a Coptic Christian from Egypt. He came into Ontario and he did just fine. So I think a lot of it had, and the guy that was my gut doctor, he's from the Sudan, and so I think there may be smugness, but I think it has to do a lot with how well you could qualify. Like the doctors that I had that are offshore were most often educated in the UK. So obviously their medical training in the UK was recognized to some degree, at least to the point where they were permitted to write a test or whatever they had to do. I think probably the school may have been educated. Mike Cushman, Metaphysical Mike, says everything is a money grab. All education programs, all money grab. You do not need college education for half the jobs, as training is always needed and gaining experience is the way to go. Is the way. Well, that's certainly the way.
This is exactly my point. It's a money grab. That's exactly what I faced, was a money grab. I could have paid for the licensing exam, study material, right, and I'd be qualified by now. But oh no, they want courses.
But they have lawyers from. There are lawyers on the bar from different countries in Canada now.
But in fact, actually, the legal profession is one of the hardest to break into. If you're qualified in California, you've been practicing law in California, and you come to Ontario, you can't just get transferred like that.
Okay, is that a general smugness though? What about what about a kid? What about a kid that comes in, a new Canadian? Like there was a new Canadian I was trying to help the other day. He had felt he came into the country and he started to take welding courses, hoping to break into welding in that. And I tried to give him a few pointers where to go and try to, because he wanted some work experience. He had a couple of his tickets and was working on a couple more. So I tried to tell him more places where he might be able to get some work. Now I would say that would happen in the unions, the trade unions of old. They would not have taken on somebody from another country as a qualified tradesman. They may take them on and begin them again as what we call an apprentice. But if they had taken the test, if they could take the test and qualify and show they had X amount of experience in the trade, I don't think they would be turned down. But their bosses might not like it because they have a guy that maybe doesn't have the same kind of education and has worked for standards that aren't the same as ours. Wouldn't it be better just to take another guy? But I think those things will resolve itself when we find we don't have enough people to do the jobs, and they'll just kind of be forced to take on somebody.
I hope so. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
So that's something that Canadians face, but I don't think it's any worse than anywhere else. I don't think you can go down to California
I'm not
from
saying
Ontario.
Yeah. And I'm saying, I dare say that probably the same smugness exists in some other parts of the world as well. Yeah, absolutely. And is it smug superiority? That's a fair question.
I'm not so sure that smug has much to do with it. When they talk about smugs, we do things differently here, that kind of thing. But if you get an engineer, you get an engineer. You get an engineer, civil engineer. In that case, he doesn't really even have to have a very high level of.
And that's exactly. English. And that's exactly my point. Is that I've done all the qualifications. I did all the qualifications. All I need, as far as I'm concerned, all I need is to take the exam, prove myself.
Well, in your particular case, you come in, you were never a working lawyer from where you came from. If you had been a working lawyer, would that have been any different?
It doesn't matter. The same situation would have occurred. It might have done slight differences, but not a lot. Anyway, we'll get through that. Moving on, Poilievre is barred from speaking in the House, and interesting. So he made some comments about he made some comments about Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, and he's asked to withdraw the comments accusing Joly of pandering to supporters of terrorist organization Hamas. And he asked the Liberals to condemn genocidal chants from hateful mobs on our streets.
The genocidal, the chants he's talking about were terrible. Death to Canada, death to U.S., death to Israel. From the Lebanon will be gone, and from some of these.
What he said was, what they said apparently was, from Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution: Intifada revolution.
Unfortunately, there's an aspect of the demonstrations that are just terrible. They're born on ignorance. The abolition, we talk about Israel trying to expand its borders, and the truth of the matter is they've expelled all these Palestinians from their lands in different times, and they treat them terribly. That's all true. But to turn around and then say, well, we're going to have to expel all the Israelis now, or take on Hamas's attitude that they're going to push Israel into the sea, kind of thing, that is just terrible. I mean, they're missing the point.
Yeah.
But they have the perfect right to demonstrate. And what Poilievre here is playing politics, unfortunately, and I really have to demean him for this. He's playing politics. He's saying to the government, he's saying, "How come you don't denounce what these demonstrators are says? I insisted that you do. If you don't denounce them, you are pandering to Hamas." I've never heard anything more ridiculous than my life. And this is a very serious question we have here, an incident. We have people being slaughtered and children wounded and all kinds of things like this. And he goes on like that. Yeah, these demonstrators were among the ones that are the worst examples of the wrong kind of ideas. Now, we talked about a demonstration here in St. Catharines where we had Palestinians and Jews together demonstrating against the war. We talked about it. They were a group that's been around for a long time and includes Jews and Palestinians, and they were demonstrating against the war. Well, of course, they're not. They got a little bit of play right up in the paper, but somebody like this who goes around and chants ridiculous, hateful stuff that the way they do, of course, they're going to get the most amount of press. Remember, the demonstrations, some are bad and some are good, and that's the way all I can say. And Joy defended herself, saying that there were Nazi flags flown in the Freedom Convoy, but the whole convoy should never have been denounced because of that. The purpose of the convoy cannot be characterized by a Confederate flag or somebody unwisely putting up like some of them even wore little yellow patches. Jewish patches that Jews had to use during the Second World War to identify themselves. A really misguided idea. Now Poilievre was pretty good with that. He was okay. He could separate the bad from the good there, the wheat from the chaff. But he has zeroed in on these chants and then turned it on the government. He's playing politics. He's saying the government should just go out there and denounce everything these people are saying. And if you don't, you're pandering to Hamas. That is ridiculous. He's really overplaying his hand these days. And if he doesn't watch it, he's going to get a reaction from the public. This is silly. Very silly what he's doing here. Of course, the government doesn't pander to a mass. If you listen to Trudeau's speech about the 7th of October, he's even trying to say that Zionism is anti-Semitism. He's trying to imply that. So they're all on board with Israel, and yet they're trying to outdo each other. I love Israel better. I love Israel better. That kind of thing. He's playing politics here on a very, very serious problem we have in the world today. This is helping no one, pointing at one supporter of Israel and then at one supporter of Israel and telling as a supporter of Israel, and then saying you're not supporting enough if you don't go out there and denounce them. They're allowed to have. I think the demonstrations speak for themselves when they burn a Canadian flag and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, it was the wrong kind of demonstration, if you ask me. It was regrettable. This will bring more, will take away some of the sympathy for the Palestinians, I'm afraid, when people do that kind of thing. And yeah, he's right. Those things are not, those sayings and those chants are really not acceptable, but they have the right to say them. And when he says you didn't denounce it enough, so you are pandering to Hamas, is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
And Poilievre should have been barred from the House for this. He'll be back anyway another day, so it's not a great loss. Freeland is also to note. Freeland has also made the statement that Liberals will not be proroguing Parliament.
Yeah, he and also Poilievre has said that the rise in anti-Semitism predates October 7th, but as we found out yesterday, the Anti-Defamation League changed the definition to include anti-Zionist.
Yeah.
When people don't look into the stats well enough, they buy that stuff, and I'm not so sure anti-Semitism has risen at all among the rank and file Canadian or American or European. Anti-IDF has, anti-Zionism because of this expansion thing. Yeah, you could think of things like that. But don't forget, there is a lot of Islamophobia right now, and there was unreasonable amounts of Islamophobia after 9/11. It's just the way people work.
Yeah.
And to do something like this, to play politics with an issue like this, I denounce him for that. He's been playing a game far too much and trying to besmirch the politicians across the aisle. That's well and good if it's government business. But when you're trying to besmirch the character of an elected official like that, and it has no grounds, and you're doing it for political purposes, I think that's just awful.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So moving on, Councillor Bateman is concerned about the lack of information regarding vaccines, and basically the Niagara is still waiting for the okay for a seasonal rollout of vaccines, but also Bateman is also concerned about the high cost of RSV vaccines for most seniors.
Yeah, so they're not free anymore? Is that what they're saying?
And that I wasn't entirely sure about, because or is it the high cost to society as a whole?
Maybe, but of course they got the RSV, respiratory syncytial virus vaccines and things like that. Well, obviously our older folks should have these vaccines, and because their immune system is compromised by the fact that they're aging, and that's just nature. So we can protect our older folks, so they don't needlessly have to get very ill. You could still get ill if you have a vaccine, but your body's more apt to protect itself if you've had a vaccine, and other people with compromised immune systems. Now, it says here that Bateman is concerned about the seniors who are not eligible for provincially funded vaccinations. It says there's a lot of seniors who are independently and he says roughly $270 per dose of RSV vaccine. And there are a great many seniors who are, one, not able to afford it, and two, need it, and they're vulnerable without it. Why is the RSV vaccine not a part of vaccines we should have? Like I remember I had to pay for a yellow fever vaccine because I was going to Ghana.
Yeah,
that's
of course
a different thing. yellow fever is not a health problem here in Canada or North America. So if you want that, then you have to pay for it. But COVID is a threat here, so I don't think you should have to pay for the COVID one. That vaccine will help the economy no matter how much it costs, because the vaccine will help the economy. It will keep people back at work that would otherwise get more sick. It will reduce the strain on the healthcare system. So it's good for the economy to get a COVID vaccine. If the RSV vaccine that they're talking about here will help anybody, I think probably it should be free, but I don't know what the rules are there.
Yeah. I'm being played because I can't get into these articles, because every time I try and log in, it just collapses on me. Right, I managed to get to depth of one article this morning without being stopped by the Niagara Falls Review.
Oh, well, that means I can say anything and you can't fact check me.
No, it's annoying on these review articles that I can't get into them.
Well, yeah, you have.
No, I'm subscribed. I'm logged in. I'm subscribed. But the login basically is just saying can't log in at the moment. Too many users.
Really?
Can't log in at the moment. Too many users. Can't log in at the moment. Too many users.
Oh,
I was logged in before the show, but it logged me out sometime as the show has started.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
I haven't had over here. I'm not having any problem.
Yeah.
I'm bringing up the article. So that's good for me, because I can say anything. You can't argue with me, because I said, I can read the article. You can.
And the other thing that happened is, you see, and the only reason I'm trying to refresh is that these articles are showing me the first two paragraphs.
Yeah, that's usually. Did you hit that little guy in the far right top corner?
Yeah, I did. First, they were showing me. First of all, they were showing me the whole thing because I was logged in, and somehow I must have hit a time limit or something. And now they've reduced the articles, so I can't see them anymore.
Well, Google it again and re-enter. I've had problems similar to that, where I couldn't get past the article that they give to anyone who doesn't subscribe. You just get that little piece. I've had a few problems that way at different times, where it doesn't recognize me as a subscriber.
Yeah, and I'm having one of those days today.
Yeah.
Yeah, just is what it is. But anyway, we muddle through. Yeah.
So anyway, in this particular case,
the cost of vaccines is something that is. Why would she be complaining about the cost of vaccines? Surely that's a known entity from yesterday. From last year to this year, isn't it?
Well, it says here. It says there's generally a health assessment that's done, and a broad assessment of the risk and benefit and the cost. That's how the decisions are determined on what's publicly funded and what's not. But that would be at the provincial and federal level and outside of our jurisdiction. So that's a regional person. Our role is to deliver the provincial program, and that's what I can speak to. So when they go after Kasami, who is the regional health guy, he that's all he can do, and he can't really tell you why a RSV vaccination is $270 per dose. I guess basically they say that's not as big enough health risk. It won't. I don't know. I think that at least for seniors, something like that should be free. But somehow along the way, they decided that that's not as much of a health risk as seems that would justify free vaccinations. So I think it's right that Bateman has brought this up. She's concerned that the information will be okay. Anyway, that's about all we have on that. Is just that Bateman, the councillor Bateman, has come up and said, a regional councillor has said, "How come?" And so they're trying to answer that question. I think, generally speaking, we're very very good about getting our vaccines. I think overall, I think in the States now they no longer give out free COVID vaccines, so they might be getting stuck down there. I think I think general vaccines should be free all over the place, because that will help your population. It will reduce time off, improve the state of the economy by doing that. Other than that, I've got not much to say. It will save lives, of course, too.
Yeah, I get the concern, and I also get the question about the costs. I would like those costs to be clear, and certainly for those people that are seniors, there's a question about whether they should be free or not.
Yeah, well, for seniors, you think you should be, but exactly. Apparently they've looked at the risk. Of course, they give them free flu vaccines, and they'll give them free COVID vaccines. So why the RSV thing is so much different, I don't know. Particularly when it's had a lot of press.
Yeah, and Karen's asking whether it's for COVID or pneumonia.
It just says RSV, not for COVID. You can get the COVID shot. You can get the other ones. This was I don't know what it is.
The pneumonia shot, then.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Another beluga has died at Marineland.
Yeah, and there's quite a few this time. There's this is not the. This is only one among others. If I could I'll get the article up and I'll get the numbers here. Another beluga dies at Marineland, Ontario, saying little on the 4-year probe into the park. So they've been looking into this for 4 years, and they haven't really said much up until now. But another beluga whale died, and 4 years into the provincial probe, Ontario Solicitor General is saying little about the investigation. Well, she said the latest beluga death is the 4th in the past year. That's 4 of them in 1 year. Provincial records show in 2019, 16 belugas and 1 killer whale have died at the Niagara Falls, Ontario. And that's since 2019. That's only 5 years. So these animals are dying at quite a rate. And they even sent a couple of belugas down to Massachusetts, I think, and they died.
Well, 3 out of 5 belugas that Marineland sold to Mystic Aquarium in Connecticut have died since they moved there in the spring of 21.
And the province declared that all marine mammals at Marineland were in distress due to poor water quality and ordered the park to fix the issue. The park appealed while denying its animals were in stress, later dropped the appeal. The current status of the provincial probe is unclear. Boy, they should take a long time to get around to that. Animals are dying. I think, in my opinion here, these animals are dying because they are in an unnatural cage, basically a water cage. Beluga whales belong in the Arctic Sea, period. Killer whales belong in the ocean, period. What do you do now with captive beluga whales or killer whales? You can't let them back out into the sea, obviously, because they will not be able to fend for themselves. You'll be killing them. I think that it just has to come down to this: no more wildlife in aquariums like that. Now, you could put fish in it. different kinds of fish and things like that that are not intelligent creatures. They don't need that social interaction. But to put so if you make a big aquarium for a small fish, and that people could come and see it, and you can understand how fish live and all that, and they may even have a longer life in there, but not belugas or killer whales or walruses or something like that.
Those belugas and killer whales, in their natural habitat, roam for thousands of miles, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that they're dying just because they're captive, and I believe that we are at a particular point in our civilization that we no longer need to do that. Even our zoos, like the Toronto Zoo, is a much better zoo than all the other zoos, which were just little cages where they put the animals. So they have, and zoos are meant to perpetuate animals in the wild too, because you can save an animal in a zoo, and while its environment is being overwhelmed, and you can keep that animal going and wait till the right opportunity, and then reintroduce it into the wild. You can't. This is entertainment type animals, and I'm afraid. I think it's simply down to this: don't do this anymore. Once the current population of killer whales and beluga whales that are captive,
and dolphins,
yeah. So you see what happens when they take a killer whale and you put them back into the water. If it isn't, it will be rejected by the other pods. It will it won't have a good life if you let it free, just to swim around. Like it won't be accepted. So that's the problem. And what do we know about this then? We know that don't take them out of the wild in the first place. Don't take beluga whales out of the wild. I mean, they're a wonderful creature. I've seen them in an aquarium in BC. I see these wonderful big beluga whales, and I felt awesome because I could see them up close. But I would really forego that opportunity just to have them put back in the water.
Yeah.
Or not taken out in the first place.
Actually, I would have to ask the same about there's got to be thousands out there now around the world of lions and tigers and things like that are also in wildlife reserves, not just zoos, but like places like African lion safari.
Yeah. In India, they have I think the last remnant of the Asian lion, which was pretty much extinct just about everywhere else in the Middle East, and so they have to be put into a park on their own, and they have to be fed. Otherwise, they'd be killed off. So something like that is useful, because when we can get the populations back up and healthy again, we can reintroduce them in certain parts of the wild, and things can happen again. So that is the function of zoos and stuff. But the Marineland, people have evolved to the point where we have compassion for the animals, and we don't feel it right that we should take an animal out of its natural environment, particularly an intelligent animal like a walrus or a beluga, or particularly a killer whale or a dolphin. These are extremely intelligent creatures, and they need social interaction. So to take them out of their environment, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. And it's the same. It's the same actually with lions and tigers and that sort of thing. And many of those that are in captivity look in pretty awful state.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see lions and tigers at the circus. But anytime I've seen that, I think, well, yeah, you could teach these lions and tigers a thing or two, and the big scary predators, but I mean, and they can learn things, and you could train them. So that kind of thing is kind of an amazing. But that lion and tiger should be in a show. Seriously, there's all kinds of entertainments we can have. And as far as Marineland is concerned, there's all kinds of things they could do. I'm sure, like they could become, with some investment, they could become a place where they can keep certain rare fish that are under stress in their own environments, and keep them alive until they can be reintroduced into. So they could change it around. They could make themselves an education area if they want to keep the marine part. So they could be a conservation area where they can keep rare things that need to be saved for the meantime, as some other zoos do. And then you can display them in big aquariums and that, but not animals like belugas or killer whales.
Yeah, that's a thought. That's an interesting thought there, Dave. I like that one. It's up to the owners of Marineland to figure this out. I also think that we shouldn't allow Marineland to die. We need a different type of park there.
Yeah, we got to get rid of the killer whales and the belugas and stop doing that kind of thing. Have an educational part of it, like I said, maybe rare fish and stuff like that, where you're helping conserve them. That would be a huge thumbs up. I mean, they took all the frogs off an island. There was this rare frog, and somebody came along and said, okay, they're going to die because of what was happening in their environment. So what they did was they collected them all up, and they put them in an area that was built to be exactly like their environment, so that they could procreate and stay there until the environmental hazards from where they were normally living could be fixed, and they could be reintroduced. Yeah, I think if Marineland could do something along those lines, it would be fascinating. Plus,
that would be responsible. That would be responsible and educational at the same time, and probably would not cost a fortune to do that.
Yeah, and
in fact, indeed, there might well be a profit made from it, because if that's all visible to the public, and people would pay to go look.
I would. We forget nowadays people are different. They want to learn things. They want to know things. The circus element of a park like that is being transferring to more of an educational thing. Yeah. Anyway, I think the rest of the area should be just a big theme park, or something like Canada's Wonderland, if you ask me, because someplace where you can take the kids and let them run around and go on rides and stuff like that right after. And then when they get all that out of them, then you take them into the educational. So anyway, we should be getting a phone call from Marineland, you and me, any day now, to help guide the future of the park.
Always hope. Always they're willing to help. All right, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so moving on. House of Commons has been at a standstill for more than a week as a dispute over releasing documents from the Sustainable Development Technology Canada has failed. This failed Green Technology Fund. They're waiting for documents, and these have been delayed. And some time ago, the Conservatives put up a motion that these documents should be produced within 30 days, and that was at least 2 months ago.
Well, we remember the RiveCam scam, they call it. The RiveCam thing was something that should have cost $150,000, and
$50,000.
Well, they changed that. They I guess maybe they're trying to be a little.
My estimate. Hey, I know of people who put websites like that together for $2,000.
Well, the problem here is the government is not governing well.
No, they're not.
And the auditor generals looked at the ArriveCan scam and found that, let's say the thing should have cost $100,000, but it cost Canadians anywhere from $55 to $60 million.
Yeah.
And it's hard for the auditor general to determine exactly how much it cost because the record keeping was so unprofessional. That's bad. When she looked into the Arrive scam thing, she found it a nightmare of unprofessional record keeping and an extraordinary abuse by the contractor, who didn't even do it itself. It fed off the contract to other contractors.
Yeah.
What did that say? That said that the government really didn't know what it was doing.
No.
It awarded a contract. Who was the one that who was responsible for awarding these contracts that cost exorbitant amount of money? We totally got ripped off. And it was corruption. Now this
is
one,
exactly the point on these SDTC funds.
Precisely, that's what I was getting to.
Yeah,
this is even worse.
Yeah, and the Conservatives, as I am, are concerned about what has happened here, and it's more blown money, more money that is just leaching out of our government to whoever's clever enough to want to get it.
Yeah, we don't know, and this thing was so bad that they had a conflict of interest. They abused their own conflict of interest 180 times or something like that. Originally, I read it was 90 times, but a little later on, they came up with 100 and something times that the conflict of interest. The money was being poorly spent. The money was fed off to cronies of the government. This was supposed to be the Sustainable Development Technology Canada was supposed to be an arm of the government that helped industries switch over to a more greener ways of doing things. But it all just seemed to be one big slush fund for a bunch of corruption.
Yeah.
The chairman, Annette Verscheeren, has acknowledged she participated in approving more than $200,000 in grants to her own company. Now, these are people who are supposed to be.
That's a major conflict of interest.
How about that?
That's a major conflict of interest. And what you were saying is, back in June, Auditor General Karen Hogan reported that the organization violated its conflict of interest policies 90 times and awarded $59 million to 10 projects that were not eligible.
Yeah, and frequently overstated the environmental benefits of the project.
Yeah.
This green slush fund, as the Conservatives like to call it, was an extraordinarily poorly managed, reaped with corruption organization. It's unbelievable that this is another one that the Auditor General has had trouble determining how bad it was by the way in which it was run. This is another government problem. Even the minister who is in charge of it sees how poorly it was running and tried to readjust it. Now, the Conservatives have demanded that all the documents become exposed. Now, this is extremely embarrassing for a government that keeps seeming to get into these kind of problems where they can't govern well. They've got good ideas, but they can't bring them to fruition. Their friends are getting lots of money off of them, off the government purse, off the taxpayer purse. I don't think they really intend it to be that way. I think they're just blundering their way around, and they don't know what to do. it's really nice to have this technology, but you can't run it. Then what good is it? Now the problem that there's an impasse in Parliament right now is because the Conservatives have demanded all documents and unredacted to be available. They were supposed to be. That's the law. The Speaker of the House has determined that they must be revealed. They must come out into the open. The government itself, of course, is extremely embarrassing for the government, is trying to say that no, there are extenuating circumstances, and we don't really have to do that. They've come up with some of the documents, but not all. Now, this is obviously a situation where the government is extremely embarrassed by a program they came up with and didn't run it well at all. You could have seen that that this could have been a good program. It could have helped a lot of people, but more people were interested in making money off it than and it was run terribly. So the government's put their friends in charge of this, and it's just fell to pieces.
Well, and in an interview last week with CBC, Andrew Scheer from the Conservative Party was holding up said they're going to hold up the Commons until the government agrees to hand over its unredacted documents to the Commons, and provide them to the police. This is actually how serious this is. They need to be put in the hands of the police.
And the Speaker of the House, who has been accused of being biased towards the Liberals, because he himself was a Liberal, and he goes around going to Liberal fundraisers and all that other stuff. Even he has cannot resist that call. He says that that the government has to come up with them because that is the rules. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And as the government is resisting all of this, the government has come to a screeching halt. You can't do anything until this issue is resolved. So the government has to come up with this paperwork. Now the RCMP, on the other hand, has said the documents really might not be that much good to them if they are procured in this fashion. So to say that the police need it might not be exactly correct.
Police may need it, but they probably want to get at those documents in a different way than the civil handover, well documented, etc. They want actually the sources of that information. They want to be diving into the computers and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So the police have said that it probably would. Well, they indicate that it probably wouldn't help them that much. However, the fact that the documents should be released because they have to be released, and that's the rules, and that means everybody can have a good look at seeing how badly this thing's run. I mean, if the Auditor General again goes into a government and sees 90 conflicts of interest and corruption from top to bottom in the thing, and says that it's being run so badly that she can't really determine how bad it is, and that was the same as the Arrive Cam scam. This tells me that the government, as well intended it may have been in anything it does, it just can't do anything without being ripped off. Who are the gatekeepers? Where are your accountants saying, okay, here, do the Arrive Can thing. How much is it going to cost? Give me an estimate. They don't do that. They hand it over to a contractor who doesn't do any work at itself, feeds it all out, and overcharges the government huge. And we turn out that was their go-to contractor. We don't know how many times in the past they've been ripping off the government. So the government cannot govern. It cannot do what it wants to do. It just is unrealistic in the very simple dollars and cents. I mean, any business has to have an accountant. Any business, like, can you imagine Can you imagine a business going out and asking for, asking for estimates on work to be done, and doesn't bother following up and just sort of hands it over to somebody they know that's done work for them before and don't follow up?
Yeah,
I think, but in any case, Poilievre is playing politics here, but he's playing the kind of politics you expect a politician should. And the only question I have for our listeners right now is, when do you think Trudeau is going to prorogue government? Christian Freeland says it's not, but everything's getting out of hand, and I don't think the feds know what they're going to do. And as I've said before many times, Trudeau's 9/11 is going to be 11/11.
You did. You said his 9/11 was going to be 9/11.
Oh, I got one wrong. I got one number wrong there. I misspoke before.
Well, I as I said, I think he'll go on to the bitter end. But 11/11 might well be the time when we get the Conservatives actually get their non-confidence motion.
Maybe, but it will depend on the NDP, and the NDP are woefully unprepared for an election. Right now, the NDP are doing better in more places than the Liberals are. So this would be an opportune time, actually, for, if this continues for the next couple of weeks, it'll be an opportune time for the NDP to call for an election, because they'll be taking Liberal seats, presumably. However, they don't have any money. They don't have any money. Their fundraising is terrible. They don't have any money for an election. We'll see.
All right. And I think, so Karen's just basically saying, have a great day, everybody. And I think we're going to have to actually say, have a great day, everybody, ourselves.
Yes, indeed. And we'll see you on Monday. Because
Tuesday. Monday
Tuesday?
Tuesday. Yeah, Monday is Thanksgiving.
It's Turkey
Canadian
Day.
Thanksgiving, yes.
Okay, so we'll see you on Tuesday. I know you will pine for our presence, but it won't. It'll seem to our listeners for a very long time that they have to wait to hear our wonderful voices again. But
and by the way, everybody, we're back on Facebook, back on my profile on Facebook.
Yes, okay. And have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great Turkey Day. When you're giving thanks on Thanksgiving, just think of all those people in Gaza right now, or even southern Lebanon, and Russia and Ukraine. Oh my God, Sudan and Mali. Oh God, it just goes on and on.
And
anyway,
every other war on the planet. Let's end it.
We have had some really brutal ones going on right now.
Yeah.
Without further ado, I bid you adieu.